Hi, and welcome to this ultimate guide for creating and designing sci-fi UI sound effects. In this video, we're going to be designing 7 really common sci-fi UI sound effects from scratch, as well as some alternative ways of doing those. Plus, I'm also going to show you some advanced techniques so that you can make the most out of the sounds that you've already created. If you want to ever skip ahead in the video, make sure to check the chapters below. I'll make sure to have those set up for you so you can just kind of skip around to whatever interests you or whatever sound you want to learn how to create. All right, with that said, before we get in, if you are new here and you are a sound designer, I have a gift for you. It's my Sound Designer Starter Pack. It's a sound pack I have of over 900 sound effects that you can use for your personal or even your commercial projects royalty-free. So make sure to check the link. I'll put the link in the description for that if you're interested. All right, if you're ready, make sure to grab your synth of choice so you can follow along, and let's get into our project. All right, so here we are inside of Reaper, and what I've done here is I've already loaded an empty instance of Faceplant. This is the synth I'm going to use for most of our tutorial today. But for this one, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start off with a simple wave table. Okay, and we're just going to start off very simple here with our first sound. And these are just going to be like little bleeps sounds and little beeps, clicks, stuff like that. So, and they're going to be tonal. So right now, this is what we have. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn down the sustain all the way to 0. Right, already you have something close to what we could use. I mean, you could use just that if you wanted, but let's make it a little bit more interesting. So what we could do with that is you could have another wavetable down here, and I'm just going to turn off the out so that it doesn't go out to the master bus. So basically, you're not going to hear this one. And what I'm going to do with this one is send it into the phase here. So this is what we call FM synthesis. So I'm just going to do a little bit here. And as you can see here now, we can suddenly get a whole bunch of different sounds out of our synth here. All right, sounds okay, nothing special. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to increase the release and the decay a little bit so we have a bit of a longer sound here. Now you're going to notice it sounds a little bit weird. That's because this wavetable down here is not matching that upper one, so I'm just going to make it about the same here. Right, and you can get some cool sounds that way. Now, if you want to make it a bit different, there's a few things you can do. One is you can change the wavetable here. You can also add a unison. And another thing you could do is you can modulate some things here. So I'm just going to add an LFO here, and I'm just going to add this to the frame rate over here. All right, now you can see here it's just scanning through that, and let's hear what we get. All right, so now we've changed this wavetable, we're modulating it. Now we can also do the same thing with this one over here. And what's great about Faceplant is you actually have a whole ton of different wavetables you can use. So let's try a different one here. And let's say we want to make our sound a bit shorter here. Maybe we want this one to be unison instead. Let's try that. I'm going to go to synthetic. All right, so with that, you can get a whole bunch of different sounds and textures with just little beep sounds. Now, if we want to make it a little bit more interesting, I'm just going to rename this group here as our FM group. What you can also do is add a separate group here. So I'm just going to do a new wavetable here. And with this one, I'm actually going to bring it up here. So this is going to be our second group. And what you can do with this one is you can add a delay. So I'm going to delay it so it's going to play a little bit later than the first sound. So I'm just going to turn off the FM groups here so we can hear what it's doing. Right, so you can hear this second wavetable play, what is this, 125 milliseconds after this first one. So now, let's make it similar to the other one here, and maybe let's make it a little bit less. And why don't we do the same thing as we did before? I'm going to add a second FM group, so this is going to be FM group number 2. And the same thing here, I'm going to turn off the out, and I'm going to assign this to the phase over here. So again, you want to make sure that the release is proper here. Maybe add a unison. You can also change the waveform. And again, we can try to modulate it if we want to. And of course, you can play with the pitch as well for this one, just so maybe you want it to sound different. Right? And as you play across your keyboard, you can get different sounds. You can play in octaves. It sounds really good when you do that. And of course, again, if you want to change up the texture, the sounds, you can just play with the wavetable here, change the wavetable, change the modulation, change the unison, and you have a whole bunch of sounds that you can play with. All right, and one more thing we can do for a sound like this is you can add reverb, and we're going to touch more into like different effects that you can use a little bit later in the video. But just for now, let's keep it simple here. I'm just going to put a reverb. The decay is quite a bit long, so I'm just going to break it down quite a bit here to about 700. Right, and now it just feels like it's in a space. Right, so you can get this kind of nice sound. All right, let's move on to another way that you can create these sounds. This is a pretty simple way. So I'm going to do something similar that we were just doing. I'm going to load in another instance of faceplant wavetable. I like to use square, but I mean, you can use a sine wave. Honestly, it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to bring the sustain down, decay up a little bit. And maybe the release up as well. And now, once we have that in place, now what I'd like to do is I'm just going to add some sort of a delay. So right now, I'm just going to use replica, just because it's a delay I have, but you can use any delay really. All right, and now what I'm going to do is I am just going to just play some notes on my keyboard. I normally like to just do a certain series of notes, so I'm just going to do all of the black keys on my keyboard for now, and I'm just going to print that out, and then we'll come back. All right, so here's one take of that. I'm going to do now another take. I'm going to use a portal here. With this, I'm just going to take a preset here in the delays. So let's try this one. All right, so that one's cool. So I'm going to do the exact same thing here. I'm just going to print some out, and then we'll be back. All right, now that we have these two sampled files here, what we can do now is bring it back into faceplant. So inside of faceplant here, I'm just going to reload here another sampler, just a sampler here, and I'm just going to drag and drop these sounds right into the sample here. To do that, you can just press Control-Alt, and then it should drop right inside of here. And again, like before, I'm just going to drop the sustain all the way down. Okay, let's try it at 100 just for now, just see what we get. And let's just play here and see what we get. Right, already you can get this nice kind of clicky, blippy sound. It's very tonal. Right, and again, same thing as before, we can add another group, another wavetable, turn off the output here, and just assign this to the phase. Right, you can also modulate this here. I'm just going to assign this to the volume and bring this all the way down. Right, but you get the idea. Again, you can change the wavetable here, change the unison, all of these settings. You can do the same, add some reverb, but you get the idea here. You can get some nice, cool sounds that way as well. I can even scan through the file here and get some different sounds. All right, so let's move on here, and we're going to create another type of sci-fi sound effect here, and these are going to be scanners. So once again here, I'm just going to load another instance of faceplant. All right, so I've loaded a new instance of faceplant, and we're going to do something a little bit different here. I'm going to load in 3 different generators here. Okay, and I'm going to make each of these a little bit different. So the first one, maybe I'll make a square wave. Maybe I'll put the sync up a little bit like this. Next one here, maybe we'll do, triangle wave. And let's change this one up a little bit like that. And the bottom one here can be a sine wave. And maybe we can leave it, maybe we'll change the pitch a little bit. And we bring it up an octave. All right, so that's the sound we have. I'm just going to bring the sound down a little bit here because we don't want these to be that loud. Okay, great. And now to make our scanner sound, I'm going to add a modulator, an LFO. And inside of our LFOs here, there's a whole bunch of different presets you can choose. And the ones that work best for this is the arpeggios. So in here, I'm just going to choose a major seventh because I know that one works pretty well. I'm going to increase the tempo here because if not, it'll be kind of too slow. Maybe I'll leave it like this. We're going to increase it even more, but just for now. And we're going to assign it to the pitch here and maybe go all the way up like that. Actually, you know what we're going to do? We are just going to do, let's do an octave for now, okay? So we're just going to do an octave, so you can right-click on this and select 12 here. And let's play it and see what we have. All right, so you can kind of get close to the scanner sound that we want. We're going to want this a lot faster to get it, though. Let's put it around here. And that is a lot closer to what we want. And there you go. Now when we play higher on our keyboard, you can get this really nice sound. All right, if you don't have a keyboard, you can just like increase the pitch over here. It should do the same thing here. Right, so you can get a whole bunch of different variations like that. And now what I'd like to do, though, is add some other effects, because there's some effects that can make this sound really, really good. So the first one I'm going to use is a frequency shifter. So I'm just going to add that in here. And I'm just going to play a sound, hold it, and then we're going to kind of scan through the frequency shifter and see what kind of sounds sound good here. Right, so depending on where I'm playing on my keyboard, higher or lower, it's going to sound different. You're going to get some cool different sounds here. So this is going up. Get some cool sounds like that. Maybe if we go down, you get something different. Right, just depends what you're going for. I prefer when it's higher, it sounds a little bit better. Right, you can get some cool sounds like that. Another plugin here that works well, another effect here, is going to be the resonator. So I'm just going to select it here, and let's just have a listen. Right, so with the resonator, you can get some cool sounds. What's great about this specific plugin here is that you can actually randomize the settings here and see if there's something that you like that maybe sounds best. So let's have a listen. Let's turn down the decay a little bit. Usually the mix down is a bit better. But you get the idea. You can basically change this to any note, up or down, whatever amount, and then play around with the decay. Usually about halfway or less is good, and then the mix, same thing. Usually less than half is good. And then, yeah, you can get a whole bunch of different tones, textures, and to change up this kind of scanning sound effect here. All right, let's talk about another way that we can create some of these scanner sound effects. So what we're going to do here is similar to what we did before with the bleep sounds is I'm just going to have a simple square wave in here, nothing else. So it just sounds like this. Great, and now I'm just going to add a few plugins here. One of them is going to be these are going to be like glitch styled plugins. So this one is native to Reaper, but you can use pretty much any kind of glitchy plugins. And I'm going to increase the percentages here so that they're more likely, the sound is more likely to do what the percentages say here. So for example, pitch modulation a bit more reverse. It's going to reverse the sound, a bit more likely to reverse the sound. A repeat is up already pretty high. Let's increase the buffer length to about 400. And that should be good. Let's try it like that. And then the other plugin here that I like is Fracture XT by Glitch Machines. And pretty much any kind of Glitch Machine plugins are really great for doing glitch style sound effects. And these are going to be pretty good for doing some scanner style sound. So with that here, let's print it out and let's see what kind of stuff we can get here. All right, so here's our sound. And just like before, we're going to import it back into Faceplant here. So I'm just going to load a sampler here. So we have an empty sampler, and we can just drag and drop again. Control-Alt, select your file, and just drag it and drop it into here. And now here's our file. And now what we can do is the same thing as before. Just kind of scan through the file here and see if we can get some cool sounds. I'm just going to increase the release here so it sounds a bit more natural. So here you can get some interesting computer sounds or scanner type sounds. Let's see if we get something else here. So here's a cool one. Right, just play across different octaves, get different sounds, and you can print all of these out, export them, right? So there you go. Let's see if there's more here. And of course, again, similar to what we said before, you can change up the textures and sounds here using the unison, adding reverb, etc. So I'm just going to try here synthetic. You can also try to reverse the sound and see if you can get some different sounds that way as well. See, that works pretty well, so I like that. So I would probably print that out and use that. Right, but here is another way that you can create these kind of different scanner type of sounds here. All right, so the next type of sound effect that we're going to create are transition sounds. So this could be for when you're transitioning from like one screen to another or from one element to another. So these kind of transition sounds could be used for that. So let's get started again here. Empty instance of Faceplant. I'm just going to start off with a wavetable. What I like to use specifically for these types of sounds are more growly types of sounds. So I'm going to go into the growl folder here and just start with this one. And we're going to scan through like different wavetables because they're actually going to be very, very different for this style of sound effect. So anyways, we're going to start with that. I'm going to choose an LFO down here and I'm going to turn it to off here so it just plays once. And I'm actually going to edit it because I want it to be kind of a whoosh style of sound. So it's going to be like a quick up and release here. And this is going to be our envelope. So I'm going to assign that to the gain. Just like this. So I'm going to bring the gain down and now it's going to go up kind of like that. So that's cool. It's kind of like the shape that I want. It might be a little bit too fast. Maybe I'll bring it down a little bit. Right, increase the release a little. All right, so it's kind of the shape that I'm looking for, but it's still kind of boring. I do want to go through the frames here, so I'm going to add an LFO to do that. And again, here I'm going to just turn it off so it just goes through it once and apply that to the frame here. So I'm going to make this a little bit slower. Okay, so we're getting onto something here. All right, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add the unison here. It's on smooth 4. Let's try that. All right, so to me that sounds pretty good already. So right, so you kind of get this whoosh sound. So that's a good start. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to assign the speed of these to the macro up here so that I can change how fast it is. So if I want it a bit faster or slower, all right, it's a lot faster. If I want it slower, I can go down. Actually, I'm going to make it the other way. All right, now let's kind of scan through these files. Like I said before, they are very different, so you're going to get different results for each of these. Right, so you can see what we're getting at here with these transitions. All right, and like we've done before for every other sound here, we can add another group here that's going to be our FM synth. So I'm going to turn off the output and assign this to the phase. And let's change the release here. Right now it's kind of poppy because the release is so short. Let's make it about the same as this one here, so about 526. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to change this LFO here to modulate this sound here. So, and I'm going to bring this down. And let's change this. And again, let's change through here. All right, so you can get some pretty cool sounds that way. One more thing I like to do, or that you can do, is add some cool EQ. So this is a cool move I like to do here, is where you're adding these unique EQ sweeps across your file. So with Slice EQ here, I can create these unique EQ peaks. So that's what I'm going to do here. There's no rhyme or reason to these. I kind of like to put them kind of anywhere and everywhere. Let's leave that here. Like that. I just like to make them really pointy like that. All right, so you can see here we have this like really weird EQ thing here, and what we can do now is assign the modulation of this offset. And what that's going to do is it's going to go up and down and sweep across the frequencies with this LFO here. So let's bring it down a little. Maybe you want a bit faster. And you can also duplicate it to make it even more extreme. Maybe change the mix here. And of course, again, just scan through these. Right, you can get some cool sounds like this. Okay, here I'm going through a different wavetable again, and just to show you how much you can change from wavetable to wavetable. Maybe I want to turn these on again. Maybe make it slower. Right, but you get the idea. There's so many options and so many things you can tweak and change. Of course, again, you can add some other effects to change it and make it even more extreme, maybe some rig modulation. Right, so that's a good one for transitions. Another effect that could be good is the comb filter. So I'm just going to grab that here, comb filter. And you can play around with the plus or minus, but basically I'm going to want to modulate the frequency here. So let's try that. And a little bit less. Maybe a bit faster. Right, you can get some nice movement in the sound. All right, for our next sound, we're actually going to use a different synth here, and it's Reactor. It's a Reactor ensemble by Native Instruments, and I'm using the ensemble called S-Layer. S-Layer is an ensemble by Twisted Tools, and basically it layers sounds together. And so it does cost a bit of money. So this is kind of like a bonus thing. If you don't have it, don't worry about it. But if you do have it, I want to show you a really quick and fun way to create, like really easily create some cool sci-fi sounds and UI sounds in here. So what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to import samples into here. It can be like literally any sample. So I'm just going to grab some sounds from my latest sound pack, my steampunk pack, and I'm just going to put it in here and then we'll get going. All right, so I've imported over 127 samples in here and it's ready to go. So I'm just going to close that here. So the technique behind this, creating these UI sounds, is that as you pitch sounds up, they play faster and faster. So the play rate basically becomes faster and faster, which means the sound gets shorter and shorter until you basically just hear like a short click or pop, right? So I'm going to be playing higher on my keyboard for this technique, and I'm just going to go into the envelope here, make sure that the envelope is pretty short because I don't want anything to ring out super long or anything, especially if I have long files. I want it to be pretty short. And then I'm just going to play up higher on my keyboard. I'm going to make sure I'm randomizing a few parameters here. The phase, I want to randomize speed, but you can play around with these and test them out. And then the start time, where is the sample going to start? So some of these are going to start at the beginning of the sample, and some of them can start maybe in the middle of the sample, and that's totally fine for this kind of sound technique. So with that, I'm just going to randomize and see what kind of sounds we can get. So now I just want to make sure that when I'm clicking on my keyboard, it's just a really short click. Right, and with that, you can get some easy to use like click sounds that you can use for your UIs. So these tend to be a bit more organic. So if you're looking for that kind of sound, this could work really well. Right, and of course, some of the plugins I like to use to kind of shape the sound a little bit more here. The first one's going to be Transient Shaper by Kilohertz. I like to bring up the attack a little bit and the sustain all the way down, just going to make sure that it's very organic and everything's kind of playing at the same with the same shape. So if I take it off, sounds like this. Right, it's a lot more uniform in sound. Let's randomize again. Right, so you kind of have to play around and kind of search for the samples, but you can get a ton of cool sounds that way really easily. Another little plugin here I like to use sometimes is just Uber Loud here by Boom Library, just to make the sounds a little bit louder. And another thing you can do is in here randomize like all of the effects, and here you can get some other cool sounds. So let's try that. Right, but there you go. There's another technique, another way that you can easily and quickly create some other UI sounds. All right, let's keep going here and let's create a new type of UI sound. And these are going to be our power ups and power down sound effects. So again, face plant, I'm going to start with a wavetable here. And the way we're going to create our power ups and power downs is with the ramp up or down. I'm going to do ramp up for now. I'm going to turn it to off so that it just goes on up once. And this I'm going to assign to the pitch. We're probably going to want to play around a little bit with this and see what works best. But for now, I'm going to leave it at around plus 44. Right, it's fine. Again, I'm going to do FM synth here. So I'm going to turn off the output, assign this to the phase. It's quite harsh, so I'm actually going to change the wavetable here. Let's put it to this one here. I've got some good results using this one before, so let's try it. All right, sounds good. I'm going to increase the release here for both of these. Sounds pretty cool. I'm also going to try to see if I can scan through the frame and see what it sounds like. So that sounds pretty good to me. Right, so that sounds pretty cool. I'm going to add a filter here, and this is just to kind of keep the sound clean. I don't want anything too low because it gets too muddy, and also too high because then it gets like really sharp and too bright. So let's do that, and then I'm going to assign that also with the LFO here, like that. If you want that really harsh high end, you can do that. You don't need to have it on there. Also, the other thing you could do is just have like a, maybe like a low pass like this. Right, and then of course, let's try out different wavetables here. Maybe I want this to be synthetic. Maybe also, we don't want the FM synth to be applied right away, maybe only slowly applying it. So I'm going to put it at 0, and then so that it gets slowly applied. Right, so that's pretty cool. Again, we can change this wavetable here. We're going to get very different results, so let's try it. And if we just want to switch this suddenly to like a power down, you can just put this into a down ramp like this. Let's try some different ones here. Right, but this is the basic concept to creating these power-ups and power-downs, is mostly with this LFO ramp, this ramp up, and then you kind of apply that ramp to different parameters, and you can get some really cool sounds that way. So I haven't gone too much into like effects that we can use, but let's try. All right, so let's have a look at this one here. So this one, all I did here is I switched around the wavetables. So I put in here wavetable from the growl folder, and this one in here is from the modulator folder. And here I'm just modulating this downwards instead of upwards, but I mean, it's basically doing the same thing because you're just going through the wavetable. Right, but you can get some cool sounds that way. But you get the idea, right? It's the same concept. This ramp LFO being applied to the phaser, to the Haas effect. You can even apply to the distortion if you want, change the wavetables, add unison. And yeah, this is the basic concept. So this is how you can easily create some power ups and power down sound effects. All right, so let's go through another way of creating like power ups and power down sound effects. And I'm going to use the same sample that we had before. I think this was when we were doing our scanner sound effect. So I'm going to use this exact same sample, and I'm going to load it into, again, faceplant. Into the sampler here. So Control Alt, drag and drop. All right, so here it is. So the way that you can create this power up or power down is using the loop function. So I'm just going to grab a little section of our sample here, and I'm going to want to loop it. Again, here I'm going to need the LFO ramp up, just off. Again, we're going to assign this to the pitch. So it's kind of like the same idea, same thing as before, except instead of using generators, now we're going to use a loop point inside of our samples here. And now if we play this, let's have a listen to what we have. Right, you can see that we're quickly getting a nice cool power up sound. Maybe we want it to be a bit slower. Right, I'm playing higher on my keyboard right now, or I can go lower. Right, just depends. And again, what's cool about this thing is that you can scan through the file. So I'm going to go and search a different section here, maybe over here. And you get the idea. Again, same thing. If you want it to be a power down, just switch it to a ramp down. Right, and that's just like a really quick way that you can create, again, these power ups and power down sound effects. All right, let's go to our next type of UI sound, and this is going to be alarm sounds. So for alarm sounds, I'm going to use some sort of analog generator. You could also use a waveform, doesn't really matter. I'm going to use another waveform here, and this is going to be used as my FM synth, so to apply to the phase here. I'm going to leave it off for now. We're not going to use it right away. First thing we're going to do is grab an LFO, and this is going to be the LFO for our alarm. So for this one, you're going to want to find something that's going to be the shape of the alarm. So it can be like up, down, like this. And this, maybe you want to apply to the gain. So I'm going to turn the gain all the way down so that it just goes up and down. Now let's have a listen to what we have. Right, you have a really, really basic shape, basic idea of what the alarm is going to sound like. Nothing special. Okay, the way that we're going to make special again is to add some FM synth. So I'm just going to supply this to here. Right, you can get some really, really basic, cool sounds like that. Now, if we want to make it different or interesting, we can choose different shapes here. Again, unison. Right, so if you want to change this shape, you're going to change the alarm. Right, but you get the idea. You can do the same thing here. And maybe you want to choose a wavetable instead of like an analog synth here. Maybe you want some a sound that's a bit more growly. So let's try that here. Let's apply this to the phase here. See what we get. Sounds okay. Let's add a distortion in here. Maybe apply this LFO to this distortion to the drive. Maybe make it even faster. But you get the idea. This is like the basic shape, the basic effects that you might want to apply to create these alarm sounds. Okay, so here I have another example of an alarm sound. And for this one, I actually didn't apply it to the gain. So you'll see the gain here is just how it was as a default. And let's have a listen to what we have. So what I'm doing here is I'm modulating and moving between two sections in my wavetable. So if I turn off my FM group here, that's what it sounds like. We can make it faster. Right, it sounds kind of boring. Doesn't really sound like an alarm, but with the FM synthesis now applied, and this one I'm also modulating between two different points here. It's a little fast, but right, you get the idea. Again, you can add some reverb and whatever other effect and just apply this LFO to those effects to get some cool sounds. So that's a basic overview of how you can create some alarm sounds. All right, so I think we've covered a lot of the basic concepts and ways of creating the most common types of UI sci-fi sound effects. But now what I'd like to do is show you some more advanced techniques and how you can create some more advanced and complex UI sound effects. So let's just get right into it. So the first thing we're going to use is Reformer Pro by Krotos Audio. This is a paid plugin. It is, I think it's about $200 for the plugin. So I know it's a bit more expensive than your typical effect plugin, but what it can do is pretty powerful. And I don't know that there's much else like it on the market that can do what it does. But let's have a look at what it is and what it can do. So basically you can load in 4 different types of sound banks, and you can even create your own sound banks. And that's what I've done here. So all of the different types of sound effects that I've already walked you through in this video, I exported a lot of them, put them into one folder, and then I created these sound banks with these folders. And now what I can do is I can basically use my voice as an input source to design these sound effects. So I'm going to turn on my microphone here on this channel, and then it's going to start to trigger Reformer Pro here. So let's have a listen to what it can do. All right, so as you can see, using my voice as a dynamic input, it can trigger all of our sounds. Now, to make it a bit more interesting or complex, if you will, what I like to do is kind of modulate this XY pad here. So, of course, I can just have my beeps and clicks if I wanted to, and only use that sample bank to trigger sounds, or I can just use power-ups or whatever, alarm transitions. I want to do a little bit of both, and I want it to be kind of randomized. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use the XY pad, and I'm going to assign it to the Reaper's parameter modulation that's built inside of Reaper. So I'm going to assign it to an LFO here. And as you can see here, it's moving. Now, I don't want it to be that strong. I mean, you can, but you don't need to. And I'm just going to go like that, make sure it's centered here. Okay, perfect. I'm going to do about 33%. And now I'm going to do the exact same thing, but for the x-axis. There you go. So now I chose the random shape, and now they're both applying a random shape to both the x and the y-axis. And now, as you can see here, it's going to kind of go between all of the four different samples. Now, when I go into and start triggering this, it's going to be a bit more randomized. Right, but you get the idea. You can come up with a lot of cool sounds that way. Another way that you could use this, if you don't want to use your voice as a dynamic input, let's say, you can use here and just trigger a dynamic input with this slider here. But you get the idea. I can print those out, chop them up, and then use those sounds as UI sounds. All right, another technique that we can use is to use S-Layer to create even a more variation and different types of sci-fi UI sounds. So before I had mentioned that you can import a bunch of different samples, pretty much any sample really, and then play really high on your keyboard. And the idea is that it shortens the play rate so that the sample is really short. So it's just basically like small clicks and stuff, and you can create those sounds. But here what I did is I imported a whole bunch of different sci-fi sounds. So I did some menu sounds, beeps, transitions, power-ups, stuff like that. I imported all of that into here. Now what I can do is I can randomize all of these sounds in here and see what I can get. So I'm just going to bring down my release a little bit here, and let's randomize the phase, speed, even maybe the reverse, and see what kind of sounds we can get. Let's have a look. And now I'm just going to circulate through these samples here. So right now my release is a bit too long to my liking, so I'm just going to shorten that even more and have a listen. If I want more extreme results, I can make the pitch here even more extreme. Maybe go all the way up and all the way down. Let's have a listen. Right, but you get the idea. Just kind of put the samples in here, tweak the parameters, randomize, have a listen, export stuff that you like, and throw away the stuff you don't like. And this is another quick way that you can generate just a whole bunch of and a whole ton of other UI sound effects. All right, let's go over another technique here that you can use to generate more sci-fi sounds and UI sounds. So here I have a sample here. It's just an organic impact that I had in my sample library. So it sounds like this. Right, that's the sound. And nothing too special here, but what I'm going to do with it now is I'm going to put on a multi-effects unit. Right now here I'm using Infiltrator 2, but really you can use pretty much any multi-effect. There's a lot of good ones from like Glitch Machines. You can use stuff like Amalgam. Anyways, there's a whole bunch of different ones you can use. I'm just loading this one here just because I have it ready and set up, and there's some pretty cool sounds that you can use for UI types of sounds in here. So that's what I'm going to use in here. Here I loaded what is called a Cascade FFT. So this is for like spectral processing, which is great. It just sounds really cool. I'll let you just have a listen. Right, so I'm just going to just shorten it up a little bit because I don't want like the ending, but with this. Right, you have some pretty cool sounds. Now, if I wanted to, I could change that up. I can make the modulation a bit more extreme. Maybe I want to change in here. Right, you get some cool sounds. Now, if I wanted to, I could maybe turn off that one. Maybe I want a different kind of effect in here, and I could try a different one, like maybe something with mirror. Let's have another like this, and let's have a listen to this. Let's make this up like this. Right, and just like that, I can come up with a whole bunch of different sounds. And now what I did here, let's say I turn this off. I mean, you can apply this to pretty much any kind of sound effect. So here I had other little like short sounds that I had. I think these are just short UI sounds and clicks. They sound like this. Right, maybe I can space them out a little bit. But basically these I created with S-Layer, kind of like I had shown earlier in this video. And I just dropped into here. But now with Infiltrator on, they sound like this. Maybe with Cascade now. And both on. Right, so I can just go and create a whole bunch of these effects chains in here, add different effects, and then just print these out and then chop them up, maybe sample them, and you can come up with, again, a whole bunch of different variations for different types of UI sound effects. All right, so I hope you found something of value in this video, whether it's in creating the sound effects or the technique or something. But just keep in mind that there is no like right or wrong way of approaching sci-fi sound design or even just sound design in general. I've seen people use stuff like metal pieces and tweaking metal sounds and then creating UI sounds out of that. There's no like right or wrong way of doing it. Just experiment and have fun. But hopefully I've shown you a way to do it using a synthesizer that is hopefully was easy to follow, and also giving you some more advanced ideas of how you can generate even more sounds. So anyways, if you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. And if you want to see more videos, I actually made a whole video about creating sci-fi weapon sounds effects. So I'll leave that in the description and maybe in the cards above as well. And also I did one about creating sci-fi sounds and textures. So if you're interested, make sure to click on those. If not, I think that's it for now. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.